What's up everyone, it's Brandon and this will be my House of the Dragon Episode 2 trailer video. Keep in mind that this trailer is for the weeks ahead, so there's a ton of stuff from other episodes and this isn't all exclusive to Episode 2. I'll be breaking all of this down for you and we'll be doing videos for each House of the Dragon episode, so be sure to subscribe to get them all. Now before we get started, be careful of spoilers from Episode 1 in case you haven't seen it yet, since I'll be tying in things from the first episode to this trailer. And if you haven't seen the first episode, you can always head to my channel and check out my full Episode 1 breakdown before watching this video. Now, there's a lot of stuff to cover in this teaser, so I'll be bopping around covering different bits and pieces at a time. So let's just jump right into what's going on. Episode 1 has already come out and fans loved what they saw, and we know that the season, consisting of 10 episodes in total, will definitely attempt to revive fans' expectations after Game of Thrones Season 8. The trailer's packed with tons of action, drama, and a lot of Easter eggs referencing the main show. Of what we saw, here's my interpretation and a recap of what you need to know. Now, as you saw in the teaser, there are very significant time leaps. Both the younger versions of the actors are shown in the trailer, as well as their much older selves later in the timeline. The trailer begins with a voiceover from the younger Rhaenyra reading Aegon's prophecy, his dragon dream. They refer to it as a dragon dream because he once dreamed that the Seven Kingdoms would unite to fight the White Walkers. And this is followed by a scene of Rhaenyra's older self dressed inconspicuously, slipping by the monument of Balerion the Black Dread, while Rhaenyra references the prince who was promised. Now, she's actually referring to Jon Snow. During Episode 1, there were numerous references to Daenerys, but now Jon Snow is beginning to get mentioned as well. It's narrated almost entirely from Aegon's point of view, and he discusses his eventual heir, who will be the promised prince in the end. Rhaegar Targaryen mentioned the same prophecy in the original Game of Thrones books. It was a trade secret told by the king to the heir, so the Mad King would have informed Rhaegar Targaryen about the Long Night before becoming insane, as he was the heir. Also, because Jon's father, Rhaegar Targaryen, belonged to the dragons, and his mother, Lyanna Stark, hailed from the frozen north, Jon Snow was literally a song of ice and fire. Now this segues into a scene where the King's Guard is seen advancing to halt Daemon Targaryen, who's carrying a dragon egg with Mysaria, in a scene that takes place on Dragonstone later in the timeline. You see Rhaenyra flying in on the dragon Syrax, presumably to try and stop the King's Guard and help Daemon. Now this seems to be happening because Mysaria is carrying Daemon's child. Daemon likely believes that it will be another dragon rider, so he's stolen the egg to make sure her child eventually bonds with that dragon and actually becomes a dragon rider. However, the most valuable treasure the Targaryens have are dragon eggs. You can't just be running off with dragon eggs whenever you please, that's a big no-no. After Daemon steals the egg, Viserys presumably discovered what's going on, leading him to order the King's Guard to stop him and force Daemon to return the egg. Also, we see Rhaenyra siding with Daemon to support him, so we really get an idea of their relationship and the bond that they share. Now these two sides will eventually separate into different groups for the Dragon Dance, and in the trailer we see a lot of quick scenes, and among them one of the Targaryens' boats is visible along with Caraxes, Daemon's dragon, flying closely by it. Along with Laenor Velaryon, Corlys Velarion's oldest son, we also see a younger Rhaenyra walking together along a beach near Driftmark. Now, these two were supposed to be married at one point, and it looks like they're talking about that in this scene. And this is really interesting because we also get a scene of Rhaenyra and Laenor's wedding, where Rhaenyra is just staring longingly at Criston Cole while dancing with Laenor. So we're getting some of that classic Game of Thrones romance court drama, for those of you into that. Now, we get a look at the older version of Rhaenyra, and this is probably from later in the show, but for now, we don't know in which episode the timeskip will take place. Her older self can be seen in a few various places in the teaser, and most of them are related to the Black Council. Rhaenyra spent a lot of time on Dragonstone later in life, which is why you see so many shots of her there as an adult. In another scenario, she's named the official heir queen of the Seven Kingdoms. We see that not everyone is pleased with this development, despite the other lords of the realm swearing fealty to her. We even get a scene of the younger Rhaenyra talking to Rhaenys, where she basically tells her that men would rather put the realm to the torch than to see a woman ascend to the Iron Throne. So basically warning her that stuff's about to go down, in opposition to her being named the heir. We also get a shot of the Great Sept, so it's clear that we'll be going there at some point in the season, although of course the exact moment we do is as of yet unknown. And as soon as we hear the older Rhaenyra declare, "I'm going to be queen of the Seven Kingdoms," we get a visual of everyone gathered in Dragonstone's map table room. This is basically Rhaenyra's version of a council with everyone who swears devotion to her. Even though there aren't that many conflicts so far in the show, we can sense the building likelihood of a few and can assume this is right at the cusp of Dance of Dragons. Anyway, there's a lot of doubt regarding the identity of the official heir as a result of a few significant events, including the death of Rhaenyra's father, Viserys. Although Alicent is seen pregnant with Viserys' child, she's unsure if she wants a new son. So there's a lot of uncertainty as to whether he still wanted Rhaenyra to be queen, and as a result of all the confusion and mayhem, Rhaenyra essentially just decides to ascend to the throne, everyone else's opinions be damned. And naturally not everyone's okay with that. A few recognizable faces are present in the scene, and some of the king's guards vow allegiance to her, but not all of them. A lot of the Velaryons do as well, presumably because many of the marriages will ultimately take place on the show. Now we also get a good bit of battle footage from the War of the Stepstones here in this trailer, that big impending battle with the Triarchy that we learned about from episode 1. This also ties in the Crab Feeder, as he'll take part in the war as well. Now, the war itself goes on for many years, so we'll more than likely get battles from this war in more than just a single episode. And it's also likely that this is where the time skip will come into play. In another part of the teaser, we can see victims who had been bound by Crab Feeder being released. And if the name Crab Feeder didn't clue you in as to why this character is called that, the scene shows the victims tied up at low tide so that crabs would come in at high tide and literally eat them. Now this sounds like a terrible way to go, but clearly we're going to receive a good amount of the gore that Game of Thrones has promised us. In another scene, the older Alicent is shown removing the Valyrian dagger from King Viserys, knocking him to the ground, and then slashing at Rhaenyra with it. Now Viserys is still alive during this, so the actual Dance of the Dragons hasn't started, but the point is to illustrate how the two formerly close friends' relationships only keeps getting worse and continues to deteriorate. Now, we also get a scene which shows an older Rhaenyra and Daemon presumably remarrying later in the timeline, and undoubtedly a lot of things need to occur before then, so we won't get too deep into this. Here we have a scene where King Viserys remarries Alicent, and she conceives a son, Aegon II, who will be his new heir. While the Valyrian dagger is burning in another scene, Rhaenyra and her father Viserys may be seen. After a tense discussion, possibly even an argument, it appears as though she stabs a dragon with the dagger. Now, there are a lot of dragon eggs, so perhaps we might learn how they actually used to hatch dragons and how they began bonding with them after hatching. We also see Otto Hightower talking to the older version of Alicent about how the War of Stepstones is causing a great deal of collateral damage due to how it was fought. And again, the War of the Stepstones was against Crab Feeder and the Triarchy. And although the war obviously took several years, the main point of this is that the real war wasn't fought using the conventional king's army. Viserys did provide funds to the war effort, but Daemon Targaryen and his dragon Caraxes were the main combatants along with the armies of House Velaryon and Corlys Velaryon, as well as a bunch of mercenaries and swords for hire. It was basically a gigantic war that Corlys Velaryon's warriors and his motley crew fought in the Stepstones over many years, without assistance from the rest of the realm. They essentially fought alone the entire time. Next, we see Daemon on the ground in the throne room being yelled at by Viserys for not becoming a conqueror and having a blade put to his neck. But later we witness Daemon and the other lords entering the throne room with the remainder of the court gathered, and Daemon is donning a crown in juxtaposition to the previous scene, so clearly Daemon must have become a conqueror in between those two scenes. And despite having much smaller forces, it appears that they were successful in their struggle against the Triarchy and Crab Feeder. Now, Corlys Velaryon gave Daemon the title King of the Stepstones, effectively crowning him, and that's the crown we see Daemon wearing in the throne room, which probably just ticks off Viserys since he's still alive and, still the king. But there's a lot of other stuff we see happening in the trailer too, and it's all just a bid to get us to watch the episodes when they come out. Game of Thrones might have had a rather disappointing end, but the House of the Dragon seems to be raising the bar back up again. Episode 1 was amazing, and the trailer for 2 is just as exciting. Personally, I am super excited to keep watching, and it's only fair to assume that the entire upcoming season will build nicely on the story we know, and will be packed with lots of action, drama, romance, and thrill. So, what do you make of all this? Let us know in the comments, and be sure to call out anything that you saw that I may not have covered in this video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like on this video too if you enjoyed it, as it really helps me out. And thanks so much for watching, and I will see you for episode 2.